that is often seen as a real problem for gardeners into something amazing. Hi everyone and welcome back to my garden. Today I am going to show you how to turn something that is often seen as a real problem for gardeners into something amazing. It can help your plants thrive. And that is weeds. So I'm sure if you have a garden you probably have weeds, and this time of year they are growing rapidly and everywhere. So I pulled a whole bunch of weeds out of my front garden along where my fruit trees are, and I noticed that there were two main types of weeds in that garden. Weeds can actually tell us a lot about our soil, so if you can learn to identify them, you can find out what is going on with your soil and then you can fix it. So I got this book out of the library. It is called The Weed Book, and it helped me identify some of the weeds I have growing in my garden. So the first main weed that I found in my front garden was this one, which is the Cape weed or Cape dandelion, which is this one here. It has little yellow daisy-like flowers with a black center, and the leaves are sort of grey on the back and green on the front with little hairs all over them. The other weed that I identified was the cat's ear. The cat's ear has sort of like a flat rosette shaped leaf structure, or like it's in the shape of a flower. It has a taproot. So this is a taproot that snapped off one of the other ones. So weeds that have taproots are drawing a lot of their nutrients from quite far down, and they can break through any compacted soil. So that's something to look at, is whether my soil is compacted. So now that I've pulled all these weeds out of my garden, I'm not going to let them go to waste. These are full of nutrients that they have drawn up from deep down in the soil into their leaves and their roots, and so what I'm going to do with these is make a weed tea fertilizer. It's super easy to make, and then you can put all of those nutrients that have been sucked up into these back into your garden, which can be then used by your fruit trees and plants to grow super healthy and strong. It's really important to learn to identify these weeds so that you can learn if they're poisonous or what they are telling you about your soil and your garden. Some weeds thrive in really acidic soil or really dry soil. Some only grow in really boggy or wet soil. So not all the weeds that are growing in that spot will be telling you that, but if you sort of take a wide scope of all the weeds that you have pulled from your garden and try and find some of those similarities and patterns, and see if that can correlate to any soil issues. Okay, so let's go make some weed tea. Okay, so first up you need a container and full of water. Rainwater is best for that because it doesn't have any chlorine or chemicals in it. But if you don't have access to rainwater, just use your hose water and let it sit for a day or two so the chlorine can escape. Okay, so we've got our bucket of water, and then all you do is get your weeds and you can rip them up a little bit. And pop them in. So I would try and avoid using any grasses or grass seeds because the seeds are quite hard to kill off. But if you are worried about spreading any seeds, then I would just let it brew for a lot longer. So once you've got all your weeds in your bucket, just top it up so that it is covered with water, and then you can put something heavy on top to weigh the weeds down, like a rock or something like that, or a brick. And then what you want to do is put some sort of cover over it. You want air to still be able to get in so that it can ferment and there are living microorganisms in here, so you need to have oxygen available. But you don't want any flies to get in or mosquitoes to lay mosquito larvae, and then you have a lot of mozzies around. So I'm just using a cotton rag, and I will just secure that on with a tie. And then you want to check on this once a week and give it a good stir with a stick and mix it all around. Put it somewhere out of the way because it will start to stink as it starts to break down, which is not very pleasant. Alright, so here is one that I made 2 weeks ago, and it has started breaking down. It still, I think, needs a little bit longer because some of the leaves weren't submerged underwater enough. Start to see the little bubbles popping up. I'll show you those. You can see the little air bubbles there, with all the fermenting process going on. So you can see the colour of the water has changed. It's a lot darker, a lot of nutrients have started coming out. These ones here are still quite green. The ones on the bottom you can see are a little bit browner. So yeah, if you want to kill off any of the weeds, leave it to brew longer. I made sure I was pretty careful not to get grass in this one, so I am just going to use it. But if you were worried about that, then I would leave it. You can leave it a few months or just a week or so, up to you. The longer you leave it, the more nutrients will come out of those plants, and the more it will start to smell. So I'm going to put this one on the garden, and I'm going to get a few more weeds for this one so that it is full, and then I can leave this one to brew. You can water this down. You can water it down to a ratio of 1 to 10. I am going to pop this one straight back onto the garden where these weeds came from, so the nutrients that was drawn up from the deeper parts of the soil can then go onto my fruit trees and fertilize them. So what you want to do also is strain this off so that you can capture all the leaf material and the seeds, so that you can stop that from going back into the garden. So I'm going to have to try and find something that I can strain this through. So today I'm going to be using this HoseLink fertilizer spray nozzle. You aren't supposed to use natural fertilizers with this because some of the plant material may clog up the nozzle, but I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to sieve it through a fine cloth to try and stop any of the seeds and plant material, and then I'll give it a good wash out afterwards. But you can just use a watering can or straight from the bucket and pour it on your plants. Okay, so I've just tied a rag on top of a bucket, and I'm going to strain off some of this liquid to capture any seeds. Plants that are left over, as you can put them in the compost bin, and as long as they are composted properly, the seeds should break down. So you wouldn't need to strain it through something as fine. You could just use this old sieve or something like that, but because I am using this gun, I didn't want to block it up with any plant material, so I used the cotton rag because it's a finer sieve. Alright, so there we go. Now we have 400 mils in here. Okay, so I've just taken off the normal nozzle and I have popped on the fertilizer sprayer. So one of the reasons I love using this natural fertilizer is that it doesn't harm any of the insects, bees or lizards in my garden. So there are some huge benefits to learning what weeds are growing in your garden, and you can turn that problem into a solution. I also really like this because it is closing the loop. I am putting nutrients back into my soil to then grow plants to eat, and then put that back in again as compost or fertilizer. If you learned something new today, please like this video and make sure you subscribe.